Damn. So they won. Police won for once. That's like one of the only times, unless they just surrender, that I've ever seen the police win. Huh. W. Syria after Assad, Frontlines, PBS. Are they going to say it's awesome, or are they going to be honest?
The dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad is crumbling.
Correspondent Martin Smith investigates the rise of Ahmed al-Shara, from al-Qaeda commander to Syrian leader.
Okay, they are being honest that they are literally al-Qaeda.
One who accurately predicted he was likely to pose a real threat to the Assad regime.
And the country's uncertain future.
You can't say for us all today, I am Angel, and forget my history.
They're not even using that other name.
Elements. Mr. al-Shara is walking a tightrope.
Now on Frontline, Syria after Assad.
This program
Everything's just broken now.
Content.
Yeah. Get on with it. I wouldn't really be surprised if they are honest about it because, I mean, liberal media, like if you're not pro-Israeli, there's no reason to act like these guys are a good alternative. Like you're not legitimizing or really even necessarily defending the Assad regime by just also acknowledging like, okay, the people who came in afterwards are literally Al-Qaeda and everything is still like a nightmare there. You know, like I wouldn't be surprised if they are just honest and like this is just showing that Syria's in kind of even more of a chaotic situation than they previously were. And they probably won't be advocating that like, oh, Assad should have stayed in power, obviously, because they're libtards. But at the same time, unless you're really, I don't know, like trying to glaze maybe the Israelis or maybe the Turks or something, there's no reason to be in favor of it because, like, I mean, it's still a nightmare. Yeah, this looks great. Wow, this looks awesome. Syria looks good. Town's good too. What is this? 6 months? 8 months after? No, this is probably right after. I came to see on behalf of all the mothers, the missing, the imprisoned, the killed. May peace. The stupid Syrians, though, they deserve it. Straight up. All the Syrians cheering Assad's downfall, 100,000% deserve to live in a shithole. And, you know, the natural consequence of what this will do.
Seeing these amazing images
Stupid
all day
fucking
coming out of
bitch.
Syria, right? Of tens of thousands of people out on the streets celebrating a new Syria and also tasting freedom after decades of repression.
For 54 years we've suffered the oppression. They used to say, Hafez al-Assad forever. Now we say freedom forever.
Quite simply, no one saw this coming.
You
Bashar al-Assad
fools.
has clung on to power through years of civil war.
The thing is, Arabs have to be ruled with an iron fist. Okay? Like, it's debatable whether or not white people can be ruled via democracy and republics and stuff. And, you know, there's arguments back and forth. But it's clearly more on the table there. Arabs need a fucking iron fist, okay? Obviously. That's just clear.
But now a new rebel movement has managed to topple his regime in less than 2 weeks.
And one will just fill it in anyway.
Seeing from the rebel leadership is a clear attempt to signal that they want an inclusive Syria and that they want to avoid more conflict. The leader, al-Jilani, has even, interestingly, dropped his jihadi nom de guerre. He now calls himself by his original birth name, Ahmad al-Shara. Even that is a signal that he is not trying to impose his jihadist position.
Arab kings.
هذا النصر يا اخواني تاريخ جديد للمنطقه. هلا حاسس بالنصر بالحرب حريه الحريه حاسس انا.
We are tracking one of the most extraordinary events in Middle East history. This will have a profound impact on the region and beyond.
There is real joy here, but there's also real concern. No one knows what's going to happen next.
4 years earlier, I saw the show.
فيه نسبة مخاطرة يعني. ممكن يكون دواعش، ممكن يكونوا عملاء للنظام هون، ممكن يكونوا عملاء للروس. لما هذا انقصف كنت قريبا كنت هون.
I was close by when this place got hit.
I met Ahmad al-Shara in 2021 in Syria's Idlib province.
تقريبا وسط إدلب. مو تايم سكوير تبع نيويورك يعني بس.
It's not Times Square.
My cameraman and I were the first Western journalists to meet him. At the time, he went by his nom de guerre, Abu Muhammad al-Jilani. He was also then a wanted man with a $10 million bounty on his head.
Wait, that's the they hung out with the Al-Qaeda guy?
And he had a long history as a jihadist. At age 21, al-Jilani joined Al-Qaeda in Iraq to fight and kill Americans. Captured by U.S. forces, he spent 5 years in Iraqi prisons, including Abu Ghraib and Camp Bucca.
Idlib equal nest run by Turkish intelligence.
Soon after he was released, he came back to Syria and formed an Al-Qaeda branch to fight Assad.
بالقنابل، بالمفخخات، بالبنادق، بالاقتحام، بالاستشهاديين، بكل ما نملكه من قوة وطاقة.
By the time we met, al-Jilani had broken ties with Al-Qaeda and was trying to moderate his image to get the world to reconsider him.
How do you reacclimate your image after being in Al-Qaeda and being on tape saying, we got to use our suicide bombers, we got to use everything we've got? Yeah, I'm moderating. Well, I've moderated my position, so.
He took us to a camp of internally displaced Syrians where he assured...
Listen, we haven't had suicide bombings carried out in like 4 years, okay? All right?
The residents that
the past is the past, let it rest.
Assad and send them home.
إن شاء الله هذا كله هو شيء مؤقت يعني احنا إن شاء الله نأمل ترجعوا لبلادكم ترجعوا
الله كريم
الله كريم المحتلين من الأرض هي.
How do we keep the occupiers in this land?
شوي نحاول ننقل الصورة يعني قدر المستطاع للخارج حتى.
Al-Jilani's key ally in the region was Turkey. It was Turkish intelligence that had taken us into Idlib so al-Jilani could be heard. But at the time, Jilani's odds of victory were very long. Assad controlled most of the country.
أنتم تحملون جزء أساسي من القوة العسكرية لهيئة تحرير الشام.
However, with his army, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, al-Jilani was determined to strike at the heart of the Assad regime and march straight to the capital.
ونسأل الله عز وجل أن ندخل دمشق عاجلا غير آجل بإذن الله تعالى.
God the Almighty, that we enter Damascus soon.
Altogether, I spent 7 days in Idlib. Al-Jilani struck me as remarkably open. At one point, we were taken to his military command headquarters. Al-Jilani had come to review the current situation on their front lines. They were facing pressure from Assad's principal allies, Iran and Russia.
Syria's Druze ally communities have concerns. Blah, blah, blah. Tensions between Kurds and Syria. Yeah. This area has always seen intensive Russian bombardments. I don't care. Move on. How did he become the leader?
So how did an obscure, besieged rebel leader manage to topple a dictator? It began 3 years after I met al-Jilani, in November 2024, when his forces launched an assault on Aleppo, Syria's second-largest city. They entered from above and below ground, a coordinated ambush utilizing a vast network of tunnels. The attack blindsided everyone.
They came from underneath the city?
I don't know of anyone who accurately predicted that Jolani was likely to pose a real threat to the Assad regime. And I was the Deputy National Security Advisor, had access to all the intelligence information, analytic information the US government has. I first heard that we should be watching Aleppo from somebody outside of the US government who said, you might want to pay attention to what is happening here. It is different from what we've seen before.
The city fell to al-Jilani in 3 days.
Right.
I truly think that they only thought that they were going to take over Aleppo and then hold there and see how that went, and then tried to build themselves up strong enough to then move on elsewhere, and that it might take some time. But in fact, because there was no true counteroffensive, the military people were like, all right, nobody's going after us, let's keep on going.
Syrian rebel fighters are advancing southward after seizing control of Aleppo. That's one of Syria's largest cities.
As al-Jilani's forces headed south toward Damascus, the assumption was still that Iran and Russia would come to Assad's rescue.
Those rebels have just blitzed through the countryside and made enormous gains in the east, in the south.
They could, like, that was the whole issue, is they couldn't. So they're doing it while Hezbollah and like Iran are obviously like busy.
More celebrations today in the city of Hama. The rebels' advance across the country has been lightning fast. But where's the Syrian army in all of this? Because they mostly seem to be surrendering or defecting.
The Syrian regime completely gave up. Assad's officers on the front line were getting paid $30 a month. Enlisted men about $10 a month. And,
Joshua Landis is a professor at the University of Oklahoma, director of their Center for Middle East Studies.
American sanctions had really hollowed out that regime. And when we saw the rebel soldiers come down, and many of them had night vision goggles on there and these fantastic uniforms, much better than anything Assad soldiers had, it was clear that Turkey had been really building up these militias. And also, Assad lost all of his allies. Hezbollah had been decapitated by Israel. They were major supporters of the Assad regime.
This morning, Israel and Hezbollah are exchanging missile and drone attacks across the border.
Hezbollah and its patron, Iran, became increasingly engaged with Israel. They had shifted their focus away from Syria. And Assad's other ally was also distracted.
And Russia, of course, was completely preoccupied in the Ukraine and had not been resupplying him.
True.
Iraq, Jordan.
All right, let's just see. What's their prescription? What do they say? What does the future have for Syria?
I repeatedly pressed for an interview, to no avail.
Bro got ghosted.
We did visit this courthouse in the city of Homs, central Syria. We met this man, Chief Judge Hassan al-Aqra, a staunch supporter of al-Shara. At the time, al-Aqra was systematically going through all the files that were seized from the Assad regime. He said new laws were still being written.
I have a degree in Sharia. He's got a degree in Sharia law. Okay, good. Finally. Where do you get that? Bro has a Sharia law degree? Is that real? Is that, like, was that just like a bad translation.
حتى يطمئن العالم أجمع أن سوريا القادمة هي
Sharia
سوريا
law
الأفضل.
degree. A Sharia law degree can refer to studies in Islamic law, also known as Sharia, often pursued at the undergraduate or postgraduate level. These degrees provide a deep understanding of Islamic legal principles. That's the thing. That's real, apparently. Wow. You can really study Sharia law in school. That's so. Kuwait University. University of Islam in Indonesia. University of London offers it. Harvard Law has a class in it.
يكتب لها تاريخ جديد.
That's so funny.
وأنتم بأيديكم كل مقومات البناء نملكها
Hustle are
على كل
you?
المستويات وعلى كل المجالات.
We have what it takes to build. We just need to work together and agree rather than disagree.
أن نتفق ولا نختلف.
We just have to back me.
In May, President Trump made a trip to the Middle East. There was a jolt of good news for al-Shara.
After discussing the situation in Syria with the Crown Prince, your Crown Prince.
In Saudi Arabia, Trump announced that economic sanctions imposed during the Assad regime would finally be lifted.
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance.
Now that Al-Qaeda's in charge? Are you kidding me?
Despite opposition from some hawks in D.C.,
are you
Trump
fucking
was
kidding
widely
me?
praised for the move.
People in the administration were opposed to this. So what was behind all that?
Now that literally
I think it's very
Al-Qaeda.
clear what was behind that. He heard over the last several months consistently from the Saudis, from Erdogan, from others, that this was an existential moment for Syria to get onto a path, a long one, albeit, but a path of recovery and successful political and economic and security transition. And that would be good for regional interests, that would be good for U.S. interests.
The following day, al-Shara and Trump met. The former al-Qaeda commander, who spent years in American prison camps in Iraq, accused of making powerful roadside bombs, had come a long way.
Oh, good.
Young, attractive guy, tough guy. You know, strong pass. Very strong pass fighter.
The situation is very fluid.
FBI's
We
top
just
10
have
most
to
wanted
wait and
list.
see what happens.
Now.
We need to see
Now we
this new
love him.
administration
Okay.
be inclusive of all Syrians. We need to make sure that Syria will no longer be a center of terrorism.
If Syria can be
attractive
united
in what
and
world?
stable,
For real.
and Iran can be kept
The
out,
fuck is going on, bro?
then the temporary tactical defeat of Iranian proxies will become a permanent defeat. If not, if Syria becomes a failed state, if it goes back to active fighting and various outside forces intervening and split up, it will open the door for Iran again.
As we were leaving Syria, events underscored just how fragile al-Shara's rule is. Sectarian clashes erupted in several cities after a Druze religious leader was falsely accused of insulting the Prophet Muhammad.
Whoa.
Around 100 Druze militiamen and government security forces were killed.
We will
The
not
Israelis, with a large
tolerate
Druze
any threat
minority
to
at home,
Druze.
have been issuing warnings to al-Shara not to harm the Druze.
Israel carried out airstrikes today in Damascus.
To make their point, an Israeli missile landed right outside al-Shara's palace.
Dude, they shot at their fucking air. They just destroyed all the air defenses too. Are they not gonna talk about that? Like, how about how the second anything happened, they just started bombing all of their air defenses in Syria too.
Gates.
Direct message to stop threatening the Druze community.
For now, al-Shara remains popular with the majority of Syrians. But he has been keeping a lower profile of late, avoiding most interviews.
Interesting.